Gonna clean up your looks with all the lies in the books to make a citizen out of you. Because they sleep with a gun and keep an eye on you, son, so they can watch all the things you do. Because the drugs never work, they're gonna give you a smoke. Hi, my name is Angela Acha, and I will be doing a presentation entitled Teenagers Are Hell's Worst Nightmare. To start off this presentation, I want to reintroduce my perspective and talk about why I came up with this idea and the inspiration for it. So, despite being 19 at the time of writing A Season in Hell, Rambo's essence of adolescence and overall youth transcends his work, leaving a cascade of other artists to follow suit in expressing their youthful anger. Songs like Teenagers by My Chemical Romance and Brutal by Olivia Rodrigo leave traces of Rambo's poetic anger while proclaiming theirs as well. However, the peculiar doubling of adolescence anger throughout history calls into question the gap that forms the connection between an 18th century poet and 21st century teen punk songs. More importantly, the doubling becomes even more apparent when poems and songs like Rambood and Like the Lake become an anthem for the relatable anger that the majority of adolescent youth experience, leading me to question what causes the peculiar relatable anger experienced by adolescents and young adults. To further get into this, I think it'd be appropriate to introduce Rambood and talk more about him. So, Jean-Nicolas Arthur Ramboud is a French poet known for his transgressive and surreal themes and for his influence on modern literature and arts. He was born on October 20th, 1854, and died November 10th, 1891. He stopped writing poetry by the age of 21 and died at the age of 37. And as you can see from those dates, he actually wrote A Season in Hell, the collection of prose and poetry pieces, when he was just 19. And after reading A Season in Hell by Jane Rambood, I felt a strange familiarity to his anger, even though we were centuries apart, almost as if we were somewhat relatable in the sense that we were both young and in way over our heads. Yet he had such an anger to him that was kind of indescribable, which also leads me to my next topic, which is why are teenagers so angry? So, what I want to get into is the possible psychological aspects of what makes the anger in teens so prevalent. In a psychology article from the Nobel Project titled The Psychodynamic Perspective, the id is an unconscious mental aspect of the mind that represents an impulsive personality style. To further explain, the id represents how human thought can be aggressive, out of control, and extremely sexual. Focusing more on the aggressive part, though, when looking at teenagers, it seems that their id is more active within their mind. However, the id is supposed to be an unconscious aspect of the mind that is controlled by the ego, the logical, reality oriented part of the mind, and the superego, your conscious, the moral guidelines, rules, and the prohibitions that guide your behavior. So, why is it that teenagers are expressing their id more? And I would like to conclude that it could be caused by things like anxiety, depression, and just overall imposter syndrome. So, that leads me into my next topic, which is about mental disorders in teenagers. In the article titled More Than Teen Angst, What to Watch For from the Clinician Reviews, the incidence of high-risk behavior among teenagers has attracted increased media attention lately. These risky behaviors grab our attention. They are overt and somewhat public, but behaviors that correlate with anxiety and depression, which can in turn lead to suicide or suicidal ideation, are more subtle. While I agree that these actions by teenagers are overt, that doesn't necessarily mean that these actions aren't connected to the same problems as well. That's where these three works come into play together, which would be A Season in Hell by Arthur Rimbaud, which I quote: "Boredom is no longer my love. Anger, perversion, madness, whose every impulse and disaster I know. I've unloaded my entire burden." Brutal by Olivia Rodrigo. "They say these are the golden years, but I wish I could disappear. Ego crush is so severe. Got a broken ego, got a broken heart." And lastly, Teenagers by My Chemical Romance. "They're gonna rip up your heads, your inspiration to shreds, another cog in the murder machine." All three of these works express their anger of the they, but what is the actual they? There could be many possibilities, such as family, school, friends, society, media, and even capitalism. While some argue that one of these factors weighs more than the others, I believe that the combination of these creates the lack of true independence and responsibility that holds true for teenagers. According to the article Teen Angst from the Residence Page Journal, in this article, she explains that the only difference between her being a teenager and a doctor in her experience is the fact that there is no curfew, essentially saying that teenage life is just as structured and as rigorous as the life of a doctor. While while with such structure, it is easy to see how teenagers can feel like their life is being controlled in a way that is from the higher other or they. With identification of possible causation by the they, which could be multiple aspects or heavily based aspects, what is the possible solution to this common anger? While this phenomenon mainly affects teens, this particular mental imbalance isn't new to the world of mental health. Going back to the id, superego, and ego, Sigmund Freud, an Australian neurologist and the founder of psychoanalysis, suggested more generally that psychiatric problems are the result of tension between different parts of the mind, meaning that problems are rooted in unconscious conflicts and desires. Knowing this, different types of therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy and psychoanalytic therapy, can be used to help balance the imbalance of the id and the superego. However, this research is not based on the conclusion of the problem, but the problem itself. Therefore, I think that it's more important to emphasize that while this problem can be seen in everybody, there's a special type of anger found in teenagers that is somewhat indescribable to explain, simply because there are so many possibilities. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you enjoy my presentation.